Today we're welcoming Aneta Waclaw to the show, and I'm so excited about this because relationships are so important in our lives. And the more healthy relationships I believe that we have, the just better of a life they're going to live in the end. And I'm so excited to have you on today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Anthony. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. I'm curious myself, how did you get into this space? Like, what was the spark for you? And I would love to hear your story and everything that you overcome to get you are in terms of serving people the way that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I always felt like growing up, I had like a bigger purpose inside of me, and I knew I wanted to help people, but I wasn't entirely sure how or what I would do. So then, when I was in my early 20s, I went to cosmetology school and I became a hairstylist. And I really loved what I did because what made me stand out as a hairstylist was that I was educating my clients. I was teaching them how to style their hair, how to shampoo, how to use their products. I was giving them all that education because I wanted them to feel confident and to be able to replicate what I do and for them to replicate it at home. But then there came a problem where I was constantly focusing on the outside. I was same thing, getting caught up in the hair, the skin, and the nails. But there were some things I was lacking, like emotional stability, emotional intelligence, working on becoming the best version of myself. And because I was lacking on becoming the best version of myself, I was, I always say it goes either way. It's either you're growing or you're dying. There's no in between. If you're not growing, then you're not staying stagnant because you're really going backwards. So I was just kind of going in circles of what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't understand. I was getting myself into unhealthy relationships. I actually got myself into a really unhealthy relationship when I was 20 years old. And when I was 21, we got married. But I knew I should not have been doing that because all we would do is argue because we weren't working on the internal part. So when it comes to personal development, I think that is what pushed me is getting married to somebody that I knew was the wrong decision. Because when I was 23, we ended up going our own ways. And it was honestly because I wasn't taking care of myself. I was looking for fulfillment in people, places, and things, and I was constantly seeking approval from my ex-husband instead of finding that approval for myself and finding that self-worth. So after I left the relationship, I really started my healing journey. And I said, I want to help people and share education that I once needed during those challenging times. So that's how a little rundown on how we got here.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So it sounds like you were trying to find self worth in other people. Is that right?
Absolutely.
I feel like that's a common thing for a lot of people. I'm curious, like, how do you think that started for you, and why do people in general do you think do that? Why do they look outside themselves for their worth?
Well, I believe that it all starts from as a little girl or a little boy. We've all experienced this at some point, but to different levels. And it still happens. You're imagine being a little boy or a little girl, and you're asking your parents to go spend time with you, but they're busy, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're doing groceries, they're doing something, and they're not giving you that attention that you need. And you just keep begging and asking, Mom, come do this, Dad, come do that, and they're not giving it to you. So then you start to get into this mindset as you get older constantly chasing attention, constantly chasing somebody to give you that attention that you needed because you weren't getting it at such a young age. Like I still see it around. I saw the other day I was at the pool and I saw a little girl. She was like, "Mom, come swim. Mom, come swim." And just wasn't giving her the attention that she needed. So me putting myself in her shoes as she gets older, I'm not saying this, I'm just talking based on my experience. She's probably going to want to look for attention outside of herself and validation because that's what she wasn't getting.
Yeah, that makes sense. So further in your story, you're talking about um, you were in a toxic relationship. Is that right?
Yeah.
You want to speak more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's not a one-way street, it's always a two-way street for a relationship. And I mean, I did it. I can't fully blame the other person for the way that our relationship was because it takes two people to make a mess in a relationship, not just one. And, I look at it as a blessing in disguise because I am somebody who was asking, I was talking to God and I was like, I was just praying and I was like, I want to be more emotionally intelligent. I want to be more mature and I want to be more stable. And when you ask for something, it doesn't come to you on a gold plate. It comes to you in the form of challenges to see if you're serious about what you want. And when I fully realized that, like I was blessed with my ex-husband, so he can teach me what it's like to fall in love with who I am because he wasn't giving me the love and attention and everything that I needed. Matter of fact, he was giving me opposite. Every time he ignored me, it taught me how to love myself. Every time we argued and just had an explosive argument, it taught me how to be grounded in myself and how to be grounded in relationships moving forward. So, I would never change the situations, but I would never go back, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. So what I heard in that is you're talking about how there's two people always involved, right? Because a lot of times what I see is we're kind of unaware of the things that are going on within ourselves that kind of draw us to that person, you know? And until we heal those internal things, I find that we just kind of keep attracting the same person. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. You're going to be tested with the same lesson until you learn it. It doesn't like it's gonna come, for example, if you date with somebody and the relationship goes sideways, until you fully accept those wounds and heal them, you're going to continue dating that same type of person until you heal those wounds and say enough is enough. Because it took me 3 years to say enough is enough with my ex-husband. It took me, and it's not easy, and I know it's not overnight, but we were constantly running in circles going down the same path every single week. Like we had an argue schedule. You can, I can tell you exactly what days we were going to argue. I can tell you exactly what days we were going to spend making it up. It was a cycle week after week. And it wasn't until we broke that and we decided like what we were going to do. And going our own separate ways was the best in order to say enough is enough.
That makes sense for sure. So, coming off of that, what were some internal healing steps that you had to take in order to not attract like someone that is no longer in line with you, but actually attract a healthy relationship, or at least be in position to attract a healthy relationship?
Yeah, something that helped me was just really sitting there with myself. I think there's a really big difference and a fine line of being lonely and being alone. I believe that a lot of people, when they get out of a relationship or are scared to leave a relationship because they say they don't want to be alone. But the reality is that's a really beautiful place to be because when you're by yourself, in the silence, it gives you the opportunity to really reflect and on what happened. Because for me, like, I remember I had to sit there and I looked myself in the mirror and I had to accept the situations. I mean, there was nonstop gaslighting, manipulation, love bombing, like there was abuse from every angle and I was numbing. When I filed for divorce, I didn't cry. When I left my ex-husband, I didn't cry. That's how numb and backed up my emotions were. The first time I actually cried after the divorce was a year and a half later.
Wow.
A year and a half later. And I was just sitting there, just reflecting. I cried for like 3 days, just nonstop, because I had so much backed up emotions. So it's really important to just be honest with yourself. Yeah, I got punched in the face, not literally. Like, yeah, I got punched in the face. I got knocked down, but I'm thankful that I'm here and I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to stand back up. Because if you don't do those things and get honest with yourself, then you're not going to move past it.
100%. I do feel like that's really hard for some people to do, to actually like look at things that are holding us back, right? Because kind of like you talked about in the beginning, like a lot of it does come from childhood, and we just kind of play out these patterns, and we have these beliefs that may not even be ours. We see ourselves in a certain way, and until we really look within and start cultivating like the greatest version of ourselves, like you said, it's really difficult to find a healthy relationship because the most important one with yourself isn't there. You know, it's not healthy.
Absolutely. You have to be able to love yourself. Think about it this way. If somebody asks you what your favorite color is and you don't know what your favorite color is, how are you going to tell them? If somebody asks you what your favorite park is to go to, but you don't know, how are you going to tell them? If you don't know yourself, you can't explain your wants and your needs to somebody else. So it's so viable to go I people might get scared when I say this, but it's so valuable to go through an isolation period. And when I say isolation period, it's just letting go of people, places, and things that don't add value to you. You know, like I had when I let go of my ex, I let go of literally all my friends. I had one friend left. And eventually I ended up having to let her go too a few months later down the road because just we were no longer adding value or purpose to each other. We were just constantly tearing each other apart based on the season of life we were in. And it got to the point where I was by myself, just going to work, doing my thing. And that's where I learned the most because you get to see, like, well, what kind of food do I actually like? Do I actually like Italian food or did I eat it because my ex always wanted to? Did I like going to this neighborhood or is it because friend always wanted to go there? Maybe I don't even like it. So when you really learn to date yourself, that's how simplest way I can describe it is learning how to date yourself. Go get your favorite cup of coffee, go get yourself your favorite lunch, and sit there and enjoy it without your phone. And you'll learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I feel like some people just keep on getting into a relationship without actually, just like you're saying, spending time with yourself and actually getting to know who you are, and coming from a healed place rather than just trying to get into the next relationship and repeating the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like imagine saying you have a studio apartment and you have furniture that you don't like, and you're like, oh, I don't like this furniture. And then you get a two-bedroom apartment. You take the furniture from the studio and you put it to the two-bedroom apartment. You're like, you know what? Getting a bigger space sounds better because it'll make me like it more. No, you still hate the furniture, just a different space. It's the same thing. You're gonna go to the same relationship expecting the same results and that's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If nothing changes, nothing changes. If I continued to, if I didn't go through an isolation period after my ex, I know I would have attracted another guy like that. And guess what? I don't have the time, energy, or perseverance for that kind of energy in my life anymore because it took everything out of me and I always say, like, when you're ready for something new, you have to be willing to let go of everything old. And it might sound scary, but if you have that faith muscle, use it because you won't be given anything you can't handle. I was
Yeah,
contemplating leaving my ex-husband for months and months because I was scared what was on the other side. I had no idea. And then when I finally left, I was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. So all you know is all you know until you try.
that's amazing. Yeah, because if we are holding on to the past and holding on to things that are no longer serving us, and then there's not any room for the new. Like we have this like internal real estate, right? And it's all invested in these things that we don't want. So until
Yeah.
we kind of invest in other things, it's really difficult to uh, invite the new into your life.
Well, imagine like having your two hands like this fisted, and let's say I'm trying to give you something. Well, how are you going to give it? Like, if I'm trying to give you like a cup of coffee, how are you going to take it if your hands are like this? You're not going to receive that cup of coffee that I'm trying to give to you until you learn to open and let go. So, if you can't open and let go of things that are holding you back, then you're never going to be able to receive the new. It's just law. It's like law of the caterpillar. It's the caterpillar goes through a dark time by himself. And when he's ready, he breaks through the shell and becomes a beautiful butterfly. But what happens when the caterpillar is going through the isolation period? Nobody pays attention to him. And then you see the butterfly, and it's like, oh my God, look at that butterfly. Did you see that one? Kids love them, adults love them because they're beautiful, but nobody saw the process it took them to go through. You see a beautiful flower, beautiful garden of flowers. They didn't start like that. They were doing work underground that nobody saw until they were ready to bloom. And when they bloomed, that's when people started to see the fruits from the labor. So never underestimate isolation period. You're being prepared for something amazing.
Absolutely, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because in that process of becoming, not only do we invite the new, but we actually kind of as we like upgrade our values and we start to heal, we kind of make it so much easier to attract someone like that. That's what I find, and yeah, it's really well said there.
Absolutely.
So when you look at people in general and relationships, like what are the factors that you believe are required for a healthy relationship? Like, is it like values aligned? Is it or is it just chemistry? Like, what is required for a actual healthy long term relationship?
Once upon a time, the unhealed version of me would say, I need that person. And now, where I am now, I don't need another person. I want. There's a difference. When people are talking to you about spending habits and budgeting, they always say, okay, is it a want or is it a need? And when you fully fall in love with yourself, you don't need another person. You want them because they're going to add value to you. And if someone is not adding value or purpose to you every day, then you need to consider if they're worth keeping around all the time because you want people around you, but you don't need them. And that's a really fine line because so many times we think, oh, I'm never going to be able to live without this person. Oh, I need this person. No, you need yourself. You were born without that person next to you. You need to love who you are. Because if you don't love who you are, you spend the most time with yourself. You talk to yourself the most. You do everything for yourself. So if somebody comes into your life, make sure they're adding value and they're adding peace and purpose and not disruption. Because if somebody's adding disruption, there's no point.
Right. Out of curiosity, did you find that healthy long term relationship in your life?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm like not really looking. I'm so content with who I am and what I'm doing and who I'm becoming that if I meet someone along later down the road, great. But if I don't, I'm totally content. And I think that's a place to be because I also got into a relationship so fast, so early on because I was scared and fearful that I wouldn't find anybody. And because I was running out on fear, my ex-husband saw that I had fear. He saw that I had anxiety. So it was his perfect advantage to take advantage of me and manipulate me into thinking, all of these things that are not true. Like he would say, "You're never gonna find somebody who loves you the way I do. You're never gonna find somebody. You're so," he would just, the list would go on of the putting me down and the manipulation to the point where I believed it. So then I was like thinking to myself, like, who would want me? Who will love me? But then what I realized is that a lot of people actually will. I just got my, I was just with somebody who didn't see my value because I was hiding behind him.
Absolutely. I think that's the way to do it. Just cultivate your best life. Like live on your purpose, live on your passion. And while you do that, you're so much more fun to be around. And because a lot of people like perhaps they feel like they're running out of time, they kind of put out this desperate energy that is kind of like internal. Like I need to find a relationship, I need to do this. But if you just focus on like becoming the greatest version of yourself, and like you said, just keep an eye out for it, of course. Like, but you don't have an absolute like a need for it in a sense, right? And I feel like not just with relationships, but with everything. Like if you come at it with that type of energy, is becoming the greatest version of you every day. It's, it's just so much easier to attract what you actually want.
Absolutely. It's becoming the best version of yourself every single day. It doesn't matter what the person next to you is doing. It doesn't matter what your neighbor is doing. People only post the good stuff on social media, so don't look at it anyway. And become the best version of yourself. The only competition you have is the person staring right back at you in the mirror. And that's it. If you can commit to being 1% better than what you were yesterday, then you're already ahead of the game because 1% adds up over time. And over time, you will become the best version of yourself. But it really starts with how bad do you want it? How bad does it hurt? And being honest, like we've all been to that in a position where, like, I was in the relationship for 3 years. It hurt. It hurt a lot, but it didn't hurt bad enough until the end for me to leave. I remember it was constant arguing every single day, but it wasn't bad enough. We've all heard the analogy of the dog sitting on the nail and the dog is crying and weeping, but he won't get up. Why? Because it doesn't hurt bad enough. So the dog will continue to sit on the nail. So don't be that dog. Know that you there is a beautiful and abundant life on the other side of what's stressing you out. There is a beautiful and abundant life on the other side of what you don't know, because all you know is all you know. So if something is not adding peace, if it's not adding clarity and it's not adding purpose, just know there's better out there for you and you're deserving of it.
Absolutely. Like, of course, like, I don't know, live your best life, like, engage in all the things that add value to you, like, like, talk a lot about here nutrition, exercise, sleep, all these things. But of course, like do your due diligence in the things that you do want. Like if you do want that relationship, just always like whatever it is, just be aware of your come from. Or like, are you coming up from a place of love or a place of fear? Those two things are going to attract two very different things at the end.
Absolutely.
So I know you like to talk about like turning your pain into purpose, right? Like how you've overcome your own story, and you really are wanting to have a desire to help other people. I'm curious for people who are like in that same space that have a story to tell and they're in relationships and all that, like how do they overcome that in order to get on the other side and be of service to other people in that way?
Think about your challenges. Think about what you've overcome and think about how you can use that to benefit other people by thinking about what would the old version of you need once upon a time. What did the version of you need once upon a time? Because, for example, that's really where it is. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's taking what's already there and how can you improve it? because I'm not trying to be the next Uber, or I'm not trying to be the next Hilton hotel. I'm trying to take what's already in front of me and how can I improve it. So when I took my challenges, and I started to heal and I started to understand that they were part of the purpose. I soon realized that I was not the only one who went through a narcissistic marriage. I soon realized that a lot of people have been, and a lot of people are in narcissistic relationships. And it's a really serious topic if you think about it, because when you're with somebody who has narcissistic traits, it's really dangerous. So for me, I feel like it's my mission to create those safe spaces for people. I've created Nourished Inside Out, my podcast, and I wrote a book and expanding on it because I want to create safe spaces. I mean, I don't say this lightly, but I thank God every day I got out alive, because when it comes to somebody like that, they're so unpredictable. And that's just me talking from my challenges. So whenever people ask me for advice on how to find their calling or how to find their purpose, based on where you are in life right now, what did the younger version of yourself need to hear? Or what could the younger version of yourself need? So that way you can help the younger generation.
Awesome. Can you define what a narcissistic relationship is for people?
I think it's a very overused word these days, but it can be something as someone who is love bombing, someone who is being a manipulator, somebody who has multiple personalities, and someone who is always accusing. Like I was always accused of cheating and lying, and then I was accused of being a drug addict, which that was not true at all. And then I was isolated. I had no friends. I was scared to talk to my parents. I started rebuilding my relationship with my parents after I left the marriage, because he would always name call me and try to put me down. After we saw them, he'd be like, "Oh, every time we see your parents, you're so stubborn and you act like a little kid." I'm like, "What?" Like, I really don't know what I did, but then he would make me believe I was. So then I would have to apologize. And then he told me that I would need to spend through the next 3 days making it up to him. He was like, "If it's my fault, I'll make it up to you. But right now, this is all your fault and you need to clean up your mess." And it was really abusive with the words and verbally and emotionally. So somebody who is just belittling you and trying to tear you down are high signs of narcissism in a relationship.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between people having narcissistic traits and somebody being a narcissist?
I like to say narcissistic traits because I'm not in a position to just diagnose anybody, and it's not something that he would ever even talk about. But like I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, so I always lean more towards narcissistic traits.
That makes sense. If somebody is struggling to see if they're in one of those relationships, like what are some things they can look out for?
So many things. They can even look out for little things, like, for example, like when it comes to how you look. Oh, like, I think those shoes look better than the other ones. Or, your hair looks better like this. Or, do you really have to go hang out with your friends? Maybe we should spend some time this weekend instead. And it's constantly trying to guilt trip you subtle, like not suddenly, but su small, one step at a time, like one small bite at a time. They try to pull you in, because when they try to pull you in, like that's when they know they have the full control. I really didn't have a lot of friends. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and then we moved to the city. And I didn't have any friends in the city. So then I went to cosmetology school, and I had a couple friends. I actually had one friend, being honest. I had one friend, and it was a male, and we weren't allowed to be friends because my ex would just, if I was with a client, This is so wild. I haven't thought about this in a while, but like when I was with a client, I didn't answer my phone when he texted me. So he would just show up to school because he thought I was cheating.
Really?
Literally crazy. And I was just like, dude, I'm literally with a client right now. Like I'm literally in school with the client. And then he would just be like, oh, I wanted to bring you lunch and I thought you could use some lunch. And then he's just like looking around. I'm like, dude. Like what? But at first, I didn't see that. I thought that was like a nice gesture. But looking back, it was actually him trying to have that control. So then when he found out that I had one friend who was a guy, like he would do things like that all the time. Or he would say, hey, I just drove past your school and I didn't see you. Where are you? I'm like, what? Shouldn't you be at work? Like, how did we, why? So things like that of them saying, "Oh, I'm just looking out. Oh, I'm just looking out for you. I care about you so much." No, you're trying to have that control to try to isolate me from the rest of the world so you can try to manipulate me to be and do whatever you want.
Right. To my understanding, narcissism is like a supreme unhealthy focus on self, right? Like it's
Yep.
always like coming back to them in a sense, and like a lot of things like you mentioned in the beginning, like love bombing and all that. It's I don't know, just very. It's not confidence. It's just very unhealthy focus on self. Like, do you have any ideas on perhaps where that would come from in somebody? Like, how does somebody actually develop that?
Childhood.
Yeah.
That always, everything always starts in childhood because from ages 1 to 7, those are the formative years. And if you're not getting the time and attention that you need, then it's going to shape you the way that you grow up the rest of the years. So the ages from 1 to 7 are so important. And I know that it was from childhood on my ex's part because every time like something happened, he would compare me to somebody that did something to him, like in his childhood. Like, for example, if I had like two mimosas at brunch, he would compare me to somebody, and then he would say, "Can you stop acting like so and so? You're such an alcoholic." And I'm like, it didn't really make sense to me. But then I started to believe him. I was like, well, maybe I am an alcoholic, but it's not true. It wasn't true. It was him projecting his fear and his anxiety and his trauma onto me because he wasn't willing to heal it. So it can get to a dark place really fast when somebody like that, because he was overly confident, he was overly arrogant, and he was always trying to be this grandiose person. But behind closed doors, God only knows what happens behind closed doors. So I have a lot of compassion for people who are in those kinds of relationships, but at the same time, if you're in one and you're afraid to leave, I have a lot of compassion and I understand. But know that you are able to leave. Just make sure that you have some kind of support and you have some kind of safe place to go, and don't leave just out of emotion.
Right. Do you
Make a
think it's
plan.
yeah? Do you think it's a possibility if people do have those traits to actually heal and actually grow out of that in a sense?
I believe that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. The reality is how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Do you want to keep running in the circles and repeating the same mistakes, just different people? Or do you want to say, wow, this person really wrecked me apart. I don't want to go through this again. So, how can I become better? It's so interesting because my ex and I, like, we blocked each other on everything. And I remember when we were at the courthouse filing for divorce, he says, "Oh, I saw your new boyfriend on your story." And I said, I'm thinking to myself, one, I don't have a boyfriend. Two, how did you see my story if you're blocked? And three, whose account were you watching it off of? And I don't even know what he was watching. I think I was just with a friend, to be honest. And he was trying to re-trigger me into his like manipulative ways. But I remember I looked at him and I said, I'm not dating anybody right now. I'm content with falling in love with who I am. And he absolutely had no idea what to say because he was just expecting me to keep running in circles and looking for someone to fill that gap. People, places, and things cannot fill a gap that only you and Faith can fill.
Absolutely. So what I see is people who have these traits don't understand that they even have them in a sense. Like they really lack awareness, and they almost like refuse to get better because they don't really acknowledge it within themselves. Do you find that to be true? Even if that is the case, I feel like you also said anything is possible, which I totally believe. Do you think both of those can be true at the same time?
I think they can be true at the same time because it really depends on the level of the person, like it just goes back to, are they willing? Because most people aren't willing to do the work. Most people aren't willing to do the inner child healing work, but that's one of the most freeing things that you can do. I know it might sound woo-woo, but it's really not. It's really going back down to those formative years and saying, like, what happened? Why am I acting like this? If you just take a second and say, why am I constantly reacting to this situation this way, and go back to childhood, then you can find a lot of answers, especially in the 8 years from age 1 to 7. Like, for example, I know I felt like I was constantly searching for approval because my parents didn't always communicate things to me like that. For example, they weren't the ones to say, I'm so proud of you, keep going, or having that kind of motivation. My parents moved to America from Poland when they were 18, so they did everything that they could to provide for my brother and I in the physical, and I'm forever thankful for that. But they didn't talk to us about emotions. They didn't talk to us about communication. So when I got older, I lacked that. And when I realized that it wasn't anything wrong with me, it's just I wasn't taught it at a young age, then it helps me get grace for myself and seek out help, seek out mentors who can teach me these things. Because if you don't seek out help, then you're never going to know. Ever since we're a small baby, we need help. Somebody has to dress you, somebody has to teach you how to eat, somebody has to teach you how to walk. We are human. We are meant to be around people and we are meant to ask for help. If you're 2 years old and there's something on the counter that you can't reach, what do? You ask for help. But as we get older, we get the world tries to shape us by thinking we're inadequate or we're incompetent if we ask for help. But that's not true at all. It's we're human. We're naturally made to have that human connection with others. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to feel like you need help because you are capable. It's just normal to ask for help along the way.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel in accordance with that, like when we don't ask for help, a lot of us kind of feel trapped in a sense. Like we don't necessarily see a way out of our situation, and just giving ourselves permission to actually ask for help. It's not weakness. It's in many ways a strength. Like because what's what's weak is like staying in your position, right?
Yeah.
And strength is like actually seeking help and wisdom from people who have actually been to the other side. You know.
Asking for help is not a weakness at all. I thought asking for help was a weakness for the longest time. I had a hard time communicating to my ex-husband what I needed because when I was growing up as a kid, my teachers and my parents told me I talked too much and they told me I asked too many questions. So I had that fear that I was carrying with me of I ask too much or I ask for too much help. And then before you know it, I'm literally like playing the role of the man in the relationship, and I don't want to do that. If I asked him to help me with like put furniture together, he'd be like, "You can do it." Okay, great, I can. Or if I needed to do something, if I needed to fix something with my car, he'd be like, "You can figure it out." I'm like, I guess. Like I was something that I was just so used to doing everything by myself. I was carrying the weight for two that I also numbed out asking for help because it wasn't an option in the relationship either. But when I learned after is that if somebody tells you, this is really important, if somebody tells you, let me know if you need help or let me know if there's anything I can do for you, nobody says that if they're not willing to help. People will only say that if they're willing. So if somebody says that to you, take advantage of it. Take advantage of asking them a question or two. Take advantage of asking them for help or to help you pick up a small load in your life if you need to. Because if somebody offers help, it's because they want to. If they don't want to help, they won't offer it. And that really changed my perspective.
That makes sense. We talked about inner child work a few times, and I mentioned that on the show and past episodes before. But do you think you can define that for people? And how do we actually start with that? Like what would you say that? But so go ahead and define that first.
What does the little boy or the little girl inside you need? That just really, it's like when you sit down with them, play that song that's a throwback for me. It's always like the throwback songs that I listen to on TV shows and just really feel in that moment. Like, yes, I was hurt by this person. Yes, I was hurt by this situation, but that doesn't define who I am. Just because that person took advantage of me doesn't mean I'm stupid. It doesn't mean I'm not worthy. And just really sitting with what does that little boy or that little girl need? Something that I did was when I went to my parents' house, because there was no phones back then, I took a picture of like a little version of myself and I put it on my background. And every time like I feel like I need some reassurance, I look at the picture and I'm like, what does she need? Does she need a hug? Does she need to listen to this song? Does she need to call a friend that's gonna lift her up? Does she just need some time by herself or a nap? What does she need? Because when you can truly, one, just understand that you're not broken, you're not hurt, and you're not a mistake. You were just asking the wrong people to love you the way that you need to be loved. Imagine going to McDonald's and asking for a steak. They're not going to give it to you because you're just asking the wrong person. But guess what? There's steakhouses out there that will give it to you if you go ask them. So know that you're not too much. You're not too loud. You don't ask too many questions. You were just asking the wrong people who don't know how to give you the kind of love that you have.
Yeah, I think having that intelligent discernment is so important because,
Yeah.
like, even when it comes to your goals, like your goals are so important, but you don't necessarily want to just go and tell anyone. You want to tell someone who actually going to support you and perhaps help you make those a reality, right? So, like you're saying with this, like, yeah, you don't want to just go ask anyone, but actually somebody can hold space for you and help you with whatever you're going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, is there any like specific process that you would recommend? Um, are there like any tools? Because I know like we can do this ourselves as well, but perhaps like a system that people can go through to actually heal themselves through this.
Well, I can only talk off my experience. I think my experience was a little extreme to what most people would do, but I would say I am a big advocate for traveling. I love to travel and I love to go somewhere where nobody knows me because when you go somewhere where nobody knows you, It gives you the opportunity to be everybody at the everything that you've always wanted to be. So when I left my ex, I stayed in Chicago for another year, year and a half. And then eventually I left the salon and I packed my life into a carry-on suitcase and I moved to Mexico and I started a life over there. And I loved it because I was no longer thinking about about the pain from the relationship. I was thinking about how am I going to survive here? I need to figure out where to live. I need to figure out where I'm going to go eat. I need to figure out the language. Let's start with the language because I didn't know any Spanish. So it was just a really freeing experience, but you don't have to be extreme and move to another country. But if you just even take like a week and go somewhere where nobody knows you, it will give you the opportunity to figure out who you are.
Absolutely, that makes sense. I mean, just speaking for myself, I think it's so important to have these balances for themselves. Like, I shoot guns, I train in martial arts, I lift weights, but I do inner child work, I meditate, I
Yeah,
journal. And I can say very clearly that I would not be very effective if I only had one side.
yeah.
It's a synergy that is very important. Like, it's kind of that you work out and you recover. And you need these things to have a healthy constitution, like these balanced perspectives. That's what I find.
Yeah, you need to balance it out. Like for me, I was going on long walks all the time, going for bike rides and journaling and listening to podcasts and reading books and just really sitting with myself. Because also, like when you go, for me, like when I went to Mexico, I didn't know anybody. So, like, it gave me the opportunity to spend time with myself. I ate at restaurants by myself. And, Mexico is a really family-oriented place. So if you're sitting by yourself, it's kind of like because everybody is so family-oriented and really friendly. But it also helps you build your confidence. Like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can go for a walk by myself. And the more time you spend with yourself, you start to understand more things about yourself. And you probably find new hobbies that you didn't even know you liked.
Absolutely. Like, another thing that we've talked about throughout this is like reasons reap results, like how bad you want it, as you said. And I feel like the more reasons we have for something, like the easier it is to actually do it. Like, find that leverage point within ourselves, like perhaps the pain point, like, is this really all there is for the rest of your life? Or is there something else? And I think one of the hangups for people is that they think that it all has to be done at once instead of taking these small steps. And as I like to say, small steps create great distances. And it's, just ask yourself more empowering questions and just take the next step. And as long as you keep on going, you're going to eventually find that destination wherever it is.
Absolutely. What starts with one step at a time? Imagine looking at a picture of a staircase with 30 steps. You want to get to step 30, but you're at step one. You're not going to get just jump to 30. You're going to get there one step at a time. And that's becoming 1% better every day. And the hardest thing is don't compare your chapter one to somebody else's chapter 10. That's the biggest key advice as well is yes, you can look up to people as an example, but do not compare yourself because person that's at chapter 30, they started at chapter one just like you did once upon a time.
Definitely. I mean, for me, like, I'm always asking myself like empowering questions, like how can I serve? How can I be a model for others? And when you start asking these questions, you're going to start taking those aligned actions along with it because we have a lot of disempowering questions within ourselves a lot. And I feel like, as you said, once we spend more time in solitude and we start doing these things by ourselves, we just kind of, it's natural for us to do more empowering things because we put ourselves in an environment where it's much easier. Like, we're not just byproducts of our environment, but we're creators of it in a sense. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. We are the creators, and you are the creator of your life. It's you have the option every single day. Is we all have the same two options every single day. You can see the good in everything, or you can see the bad in everything. We all believe in one of two things that we cannot see. One is faith, and the other one is fear. Which one are you going to choose to believe in? Is that I just chose to see the good in everything. And because I've chosen to see the good in everything, my life has tremendously improved from suffering with my ex-husband to being able to live in a different country. And you need to understand that I would have never been able to live in another country if I didn't say enough is enough and I'm not going to suffer anymore. Because I wholeheartedly believe that nothing would have gotten better if I chose to stay in that relationship, and things would spiral backwards so far that it would be such a far pit. They always say, if you get on the wrong train, get off at the next stop. And we're not talking about trains. If you get into the wrong relationship, get out as soon as you can. Don't, I hate it. Something that I've learned is that when people say, I like this person because they have potential to do this. Stop that. That's fake. Don't do that. Do not fall in love with potential of somebody. Fall in love with that person for who they are today, because you can't change another person's actions or attitudes. You can only change your actions and your attitudes. So if the second you start falling in love with somebody's potential, you've already got or you're already on the road to a painful relationship, because you cannot physically change how that person thinks, acts, or feels. Only you. So if you see signs of red flags in a relationship and you think, oh, well, they'll change. No, they won't, but you can. So always remember that you're falling in love with the person for who they are today. And if you can't love who they are today, then you got to reevaluate.
Yeah, when somebody shows you who they are, you gotta believe them, right?
Yes.
We we have this fantasy version of them and what they could be, but what are their actions, right? And maybe they will be in the future, but you know what? Maybe they will change, but most likely not with you, right? Like we want people to change, but the reality is the only thing we can do is just be the model and versions of ourselves, and people are gonna change on their own time, if at all.
Yep. That's true. It's like people will change when they truly want to. People will not change if somebody tells them to, but they will change when they truly want to. So focus on yourself, become the best version of yourself, and eventually you're going to find someone who is the best version of themselves for you. But don't try to go out there changing people, because it just will never work. If you're in math class and you're the worst at student in the class, and your teacher is like, I believe in that person, they're gonna be a mathematician. No, they won't, because that kid person probably doesn't care, which was me. My teacher was like, Aneta, like, why are you so bad at math? I'm like, it's not my thing, and I'm not that interested in excelling in it. And that's just the reality of it. My teacher couldn't change how I viewed math. I just, thank God I passed somehow. But at the end of the day, people will only change if they want to.
All right. I mean, as a coach myself, I know that like I can't make anyone change. They really have to have it within themselves. Like they have to have the reasons, and then of course, like you can, like a coach, like you can kind of show them the leverage points of like things. Of course, we're not talking about like in a relationship how if they're just small things that you can kind of get past. But if we're talking about the person that who they are at their core, like don't be expecting them to change like that. You know, like of course, like if people like if you're in a good relationship and people have certain tendencies, of course we can work with that, right? But if they're kind of making a toxic relationship because who they are at their core, that's when we have to like, is this something I need to leave or something I need to adjust?
Completely, completely. Focus on yourself and the rest will follow.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked a lot about the uh, the inner child. We talked about how to have a healthy relationship. We narcissistic traits and things to look out for. And I'm curious, is there anything that you would like to add? Perhaps is there any traits that we should in a relationship in general, like perhaps not narcissistic, but just things that we should look out for that are no longer healthy in a relationship, like things are just kind of not going to lead to success.
I'm a firm believer that we all have a purpose and a mission to accomplish while we're here. And if somebody is not helping you find clarity to your purpose and helping add value to you, then it probably is better on the other side. And I say that because, like, yeah, it's all fun and games going out, having fun, having all these like recreational date nights and things like that. But at the end of the day, the most fulfilling thing in my journey so far has been adding value to other people's lives. So, how can you add value to people's lives, whether it's your partner, whether it's a friend, whether it's an organization that you volunteer at? How can you add more value? Because adding value is one of the most priceless things that you can give somebody. My dance teachers had sown a lot of seeds into me when I was a kid, and they don't even probably realize how many seeds they sown into me. And I'm forever thankful. They sowed discipline, integrity, honesty, loyalty. I remember I would be at the dance studio and they would have like Bible verses on the walls, and I didn't even know what that was at the time. And looking back at my dances that I performed over the years, a lot, like at least half of them were Christian songs, and I didn't even know that. But looking back on it now, they planted those seeds of faith in me, and now I feel like it's my responsibility to start sowing them into other people and to start sowing seeds. So it's like whatever you can, think about some when you come up in contact with someone, just say, how can you add value to people? Because when you help people get what they want, you will eventually get what you want. So it starts with you giving.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Anita, I really enjoyed this. I think we helped a lot of people in terms of what to look out for in a relationship, right? And especially starting out with yourself. That's perhaps the most important thing, like getting to know who you are and all that. Thank you for coming on and sharing your insights with us. I appreciate it so much. If people want to learn more about you, if people want to get into your work, where can they go for that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Aneta Waclaw, and then on YouTube and Substack, where I do a lot of writing. My podcast, Nourished Inside Out, is available.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming on the show and have a great day.
Thank you so much.